Okay, we're live.
We're live.
Welcome to the first episode of Inside the Courtyard. This is a podcast that basically looks at all the major events that happened in China over a calendar month. This first episode is definitely going to be a recap of what happened in 2020, and this is a particularly long year in terms of events. Not just COVID, but a lot of other shit went down in China as well. If I think we should explain what the courtyard really refers to.
I'm dying. I'm dying for you to explain it. I'm dying.
I think you have to explain it because I don't exactly remember what the split between the north and the south is.
I can't believe you're doing this to me.
Go.
Well, first and foremost, prior to engaging what it means, the courtyard per se, we need to understand that to understand these events, you need to understand how the party works and how it interacts with several of its sometimes organization or state organization. So we have let's say a more imperial split. It used to refer to the sections of Forbidden City. So you have the south courtyard and you have the north courtyard. And then you need to understand, like, the government has a place in one and the party has a place in another one. And there's always this idea that both are interacting and producing some very interesting policy choices along the lines of crisis management or lack thereof, and or economic development. So this is the idea of what we mean by inside the courtyard. So we're giving you an idea of how both the party state structure, the party apparatus, and the government works, how they interact, what they do, and in turn explain policy outcomes or how things unfolded in times. And let us be clear by saying that we're not pro-party nor against the party. And this sometimes might go down as, sometimes, because let's face it, sometimes there's so many mistakes along the way, you can't avoid sounding like Beijing bashing. But in the end, it is not. What it is highlighting what happened, the way it unfolded, and explain why sometimes it unfortunately, or depending on how you see things, how it makes sense to the party, the logic behind things. That's why, for those of you who are more familiar with Chinese history or political history, the Great Leap Forward can be seen as a massive, massive cataclysmic biblical mistake, and at the same time a massive takeover of the party for Mao, and also a massive victory. So it really depends on how you look at things. So the bottom line is, it's all about understanding the logic of the party, even though from our perspective or from a Western perspective, it makes actually no sense whatsoever. But from the party's perspective, some of the things that happened make sense, and there were even good ideas to begin with. Although results were, we'll come back to that at some point. But results of some policies are dubious at best. But there was a logic to these things, and this is the way. This is the road we want to take you down on, like dive in some rabbit holes sometimes that have no end. Like, it's just dark down. We just go deep down in the party structure to understand how it happened.
Yeah, I think one of the motivations for creating this podcast is that basically most mainstream coverage of what happens in China gets it wrong most of the time. They're basically looking at kind of I would say not the symptoms, but like the result without understanding how the party or why the party did what it did. And this is really lacking from kind of mainstream analysis. And this gives like the best example I can give is probably just the overemphasis on what the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs says. And let's be honest, like, really, this ministry is pretty much useless within the party state apparatus in terms of decision making and policy making. It's just a mouthpiece. And it's a mouthpiece for its own population to hear. So again, the overemphasis on what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs says often gives the impression that the party, or rather that the party state at large, is doing one thing, when in reality it might be the opposite, or has completely no bearing on what the party actually thinks or does.
And that might be just one example. That might be just one
there's
example.
multiple examples. There's many examples.
Because if you go down the road of that idea specifically, Minister of Commerce, well, we could easily say that Ministry of Foreign Affairs is basically just a place for discourses to be read that are printed at home. So it's kind of like a dual structure propaganda or publicity, depending on how you want to look at it. And they have no real leeway whatsoever. And sometimes they go rogue. They say things that Beijing does not agree with, but it's within the frame of the overall logic of how this should behave. So it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, sometimes it's not authorized at all.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, you pointed to it earlier, like, if you are not familiar with Chinese history and Chinese culture and kind of the context under which the political system grew out of, sometimes these decisions make absolutely no fucking sense. And that's just, you just have to get used to it. This is just a completely different socio-political context that you're dealing with. And the structures and logic that surround this wider system are going to feel foreign at times. But we will do our best to explain, I guess, the historical context behind some of the thinking that goes into the party.
And maybe the first, let's say, if we go down in a chronological order, maybe the first event, without going back to, let's say, November or December 2019, if we just stick to 2020, maybe the first thing would be the phase one of the trade deal. Because let's face it, at first, and that was this is still amazes me today, because I was reading something last week. Oh yeah, like in terms of like economic chess, China was able to outmaneuver the US. I was like, did you already forget the concessions that were made in January 2020? Like, like you forgot, right? Because that was not a victory, like, lest we forget. And I think you can dive in more details, but lest we forget, they were pushed into compliance, literally.
Yeah. I think I saw that same article pop up. I think it was on Bloomberg or something. But
no, stop trying to blame post.
Well, yeah, one of those major publications. But
regardless,
yeah, people who write these articles have clearly already forgotten about the phase one trade deal, and I venture to guess that a lot of these people never even read the thing cover to cover, because there is literally nothing that China, not nothing, but I would say it pales in comparison to the amount of market access China has offered the U.S. In terms of, I mean, the key things I would say are agricultural goods and financial services. And I mean, you guys can go and read the specific clauses yourself, but I mean, overall, there's no way that anyone who has read the trade deal can see this as a victory for China. This is an absolute blowout win for the US. And the best part is for some time, it froze out the Europeans too, because this market access was only given to American companies. It's not foreign companies, it's American companies. So until the very recent signing of the
comprehensive agreement on investment,
which, by the way, is
it's not signed. Let's put it this way: it's not signed. They have a tentative agreement. Like, this is not done. This is not over yet. Like, there's lots of there's much more work to be done. There's a start, but like, we're nowhere near what they got in January. They strong-armed themselves into the financial market, which was, to be fair, the best thing to do, because otherwise they would never get it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you have stuff like Amex moving in, MasterCard, Visa. What else was there? The amazing thing was American credit rating agencies were going to be allowed to rate interbank bonds, which is
this is a major this is not a win for China. Like, this is a major loss in terms of controlling what you think these bonds are worth. And let's face it, you definitely don't want the appraisal of an external player on that. Like, you definitely don't want that.
No. And if I recall correctly, when it was signed, I don't think the Chinese side actually, there wasn't that much press on it. They kind of brushed it under the table and was just.
Let me think. I recall. I mean, of course, the regular like BBS or the regular like shady websites were covering it because it was a U.S. victory, and they were really happy that they stick it to China. Basically, that was the thing. But in terms of like local literature, I mean, not much. Oh no, I remember now. Oh, I remember. Yeah, this is so not how it unfolded domestically. Oh man, I remember. I recall like the People's Daily and even the China Daily had publications and articles out criticizing immensely the signing of the accord, because they kind of figured out that, like, yeah, we didn't win anything. Like, we're forced to buy food and like stuff from the US, and then we're also forced to open parts of the financial market, which the party was really adamant that it would probably never happen. But again, they were forced because the US sprung down their way through. So yeah, there was a lot of pieces on that. So you had this, and this is a recurring theme in recent or in Chinese politics in general. You have this dual discourse. Like, you have people that are maybe a longer comment on that. You have people inside the party like that are actually looking to do good, and they're actually public servant in the way that you intended to be, and they're really trying, and they're trying. You need to put it like they're trying to do some good. Like people like Liu He, who's number one assistant to Xi Jinping. Deep down, he's a reformer. He cannot be for structural constraint, but he is a reformer, and he wants some things to change because he knows the situation he's in, and he knows the domestic financial situation. He knows. And then you have, on the other hand, like the conservatives saying, like, no, like, we can't bow down to imperialist forces, and then this creates massive clash inside the party, and then in the end, you're forced to sign weird treaties or to frame these treaties in a very weird, like, very, very weird kind of victory, like North Korean style. Sometimes, oh yeah, it was a victory. Like, how was that a victory? Like, I don't get it. Please explain. Like, do tell, how was that a victory?
I think it's a good. We should put a pin here and just explain that, despite the party seeming like a monolith, it actually, and I know I get a lot of flack for saying this, it actually kind of functions like a competitive democracy because of the large number of different competing interests and factions. I mean, this should sound pretty obvious, but people often.
You don't need to say democracy to talk about a competitive structure.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't need to use that word because, like, although if you use the party's discourse as like democratic centralism, so you'd be right to a certain degree. You'd be right depending on how you interpret democracy, but that's besides the point. The party works as a competitive structure, and let's say the main issue that they have is that the stakes are very high, like much higher than a democracy can be. Because if you lose in a democracy, even though it's a subgroup or it's a network of interest, the worst thing that's going to happen is like your policy choice will simply not be implemented, or the legislation you're pushing will just not make it to the floor. Like, that's the worst case scenario. Like, exactly, or you lose the vote. I mean, well, big deal. Like, big deal, big deal. But if you lose the inter-party struggle, like, there can be dramatic consequences. Like, you can disappear, or you can, like, most of your allies can also be flagged, and then you'll go down the road of being investigated or being taken away, which is still the best image and the best saying ever made by the CCDI. It's amazing. Like, It's been taken away. That's good. It's amazing. It's been taken away. So,
bro. The best is when they said they accept the investigation.
oh yeah,
the
that happened like twice. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like he had a choice. Like, are you out of your mind? Or the guy who surrendered. I was like, no, he didn't surrender. No. He
cornered him.
was yeah, exactly. He was surrounded, and he probably threatened his family. Like this is how it rolls. Like there's no way he surrendered. Oh, bro.
But at the same time, if you win, the upsides are also more massive than a democracy.
Oh, exactly. Because then you get to control actual part of a state, and that's why you need to understand the distinction between the party and the state, because there are different things. Although people see it as no, it's the party state or it's a regime. No, it's fragmented, and people control spaces inside of that, competing for interest, budget, fiscal allocation. It's a nightmare to navigate that. And sometimes you wonder, like, how come they're still able to make it work? Which is like I would say, wow, like they're still able to make it work somehow.
Just this is gonna foreshadow what the shit that went down during the early days of COVID in Wuhan. We'll get to that later. Get to that later, but the amount of clusterfuck that exists within the regime itself directly explains the clusterfuck that occurred in the initial handling of COVID-19. We'll get to that, but I think to bring this back to the point of the trade deal is that even though on paper and materially and factually it was a massive win for the U.S., the discourse on it domestically was it was reflective of struggles within the party itself, and framing it and the attempt at framing it as a like you said, like a North Korean kind of style victory, like it's very bizarre, and that's a separate system within the party state, the propaganda system at work, which includes the state-owned newspapers, which includes the propaganda department.
Oh, and this has a life of its own, like completely a life of its own. It can be on your side and just silence you or just pile on you. It really depends on how things are going. And there's maybe other things to add on the trade deal. I remembered prior for that to be signed, other pundits, not necessarily Americans, but some Chinese, I guess, they're saying like, oh yeah, but the Chinese can retaliate, and all the while we're like, yeah, but how? Like you don't get it. Like you don't have the fiscal power to strong arm the U.S. Like what you can do is so little, and that's the saddest part. Because like knowing that, you should not attempt to rile the U.S. I'm not saying that you should comply and abide, but at the same time, when you know where you stand in the grander scheme of things, I mean, you need to behave, or at least to think before you proceed.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem is that they I don't know if it was the conservatives really pushing for this, probably, but it was the lack of understanding. And like you said, like pundits were like, oh, like they could dump all their U.S. Debt holdings. But it's also like, why would they? Why?
Yeah, but besides the point, why would they? Even if they did, you recall somebody made a statistical model. Like, yeah, but this would be swallowed back in the system in like a day at best. I was like, yeah, so that's not a weapon. That's not even a threat. Like that's like.
And I remember during this, I mean, even before leading up to the signing of the trade deal, I mean, they had to sign it because the Chinese economy was getting pummeled so hard.
Oh, inflation was rampant,
and just the amount of businesses that were dying because of tariffs, and the overall rise in non-performing assets and non-performing loans. Like, oh my lord!
And the slew of defaults right at the end of 2019.
They really didn't have a choice but to sign it. And if they let's put it this way, if they had more bargaining power, there would have been something in the trade deal that would have reflected that.
Exactly. See, I think that's case closed right there. Right there, case closed. And to be fair, and this might be maybe the last thing before we jump into something else, but the U.S. could have asked for more, and they just didn't. But they could have asked for more at the time, and I don't think Beijing sometimes understands how lucky they were that maybe the U.S. ran out of imagination on that specifically.
But but I mean, when it was signed, I think like Western pundits were like, "Oh, there should have been more provisions for like copyright infringement or what?"
Oh
Like,
yeah. I remember that.
like that's a two-side problem. On one hand, is like you can't really ask the Chinese side to do that because they lack a structure to enforce that. They don't have a mature, functioning legal and regulatory system. Like it's
No.
still being developed, so there's no point adding these provisions. It's not going to do anything because they can't enforce it. On the other hand, it's also like, why are you focusing on the things you didn't get? Like you got so much shit.
And the financial part was still the best thing. Like if you really want to get leeway and leverage inside the domestic system, like that was the way to go. Like fully owned financial institution that can exist on Chinese soil. That was one of the best victory for them.
And they're all, I mean, throughout 2020, they're all moving to Shanghai, right? Like nobody is going to, none of them are going to Shenzhen. It's all Shanghai because they set
why
up.
Why would you go to Shenzhen specifically?
I don't know, like, closer home maybe.
No, it's like but like ew. I'm sorry, but like no.
Shenzhen is pretty disgusting.
But like I think the infrastructure is still like for financial thing. It's still better to be in Shanghai still.
Yeah, but they're all in the free like the free port zone or whatever. So like
in Pudong.
New Pudong, right? It's a new Pudong.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, the new Pudong. Yeah. I mean,
here you can access like Facebook and YouTube and all that shit. Allegedly, I don't know. I haven't been, but supposedly that's like it's all like liberalized and shit. So yeah, I mean,
I remember a time that was like, oh man, I'm thinking about this is like more than a decade ago. I remember like Pudong was like parts of Pudong were empty. There were just buildings, but there was no one.
Yeah,
I remember. But we're talking Pudong. We're not talking like a random place. I recall. Oh man, that was a long time ago. Oh man.
Well, I mean, that's not what it's like now. Pudong was fucking lit.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, I think it was in during the Olympics. Oh yeah, during the Olympics. Oh man,
that's over a decade ago.
Yeah, more than a decade ago. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that really happened. But to be fair, it happened at the same time that the wildfire was already lit down in Wuhan.
Okay, but wait, hold on. This is a very
this is
a story that stretches back to 2019. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. When
was the first actual reporting of this? Was it? It was November, right?
Some of the things I've read place it back to even like late October, which would make sense because after party reunion, like the tensions are lower a little bit. So if things, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the earliest reports, some have said that it was like late October, which is why you can find some internal documents dating back to like mid-November or even early December. It means that there was some, like the situation has been monitored for a little while.
Yeah, I recall South China Morning Post. I think it was sometime November or early December.
But there definitely was some November and December reports. Yes, of something happening. Yeah,
I recall reading it and I was like, "Oh fuck, it's happening," because I knew the moment this shit came out, there was no stopping this. I didn't think it would get to this stage, you know.
But again, okay, if we dive in the rabbit hole, first thing people need to understand.
Wait. First, let's speculate as to where the virus came from.
No, we don't, because it's still unclear. Because most of the we know that at first we were talking about snake feces, and then I think this was tossed aside eventually, and it was most likely through bat, which is a common transmitter, and or pangolin, which is also another type of common transmitter, just like rodents are a transmitter for plague and stuff like that. So, word of advice: never eat marmot. Like, this is something you should always avoid.
Again,
Like,
this
never
is
ever.
this is to highlight like rare wildlife trade in China, because on one hand, some of the materials are used for like traditional Chinese medicine,
Yep.
which I'm not going to comment any further on.
Nope.
The other thing is that people eat it as a flex.
Yep.
People eat rare shit as to like flex on other people, which I never understood, because again, bats don't even look appetizing, so I don't know why people would eat that shit.
But again, but that's the same problem with like bushmeat in Africa. I mean, although for them it's sustenance, but in China it's a weird. It's like,
It's a
okay,
flex.
yeah, it's a flex, but at the same time, like, people go to these markets, and then we'll go back to that later. It's about freshness and stuff. But at the same time, I recall like most of my friends were like no, like, okay, it's fresh, fair point. But at the same time, what is fresh for you? Like, is it that dude murdered the pig and then he just brought it back on his cartwheel? Is that what you mean? Or you mean that it was like processed in a clean environment, fast, or in a rapid manner? And like, what do you mean by fresh? Like, because the dude who came by rolling with his like fried pork cartwheel, like, yeah, it's definitely probably fresh because like he's got a good turnover. But like, where does that come from? We don't know. So
Yes.
most people who
Origin of the
actually have like who have a, let's say, that's a class thing, I think, and this is going to be also a key element to understand as we go by. And if we ever go back to the tainted milk issue, it's also a class thing. People who go to these markets are not necessarily the richest one, or the people who can afford to go to like high standard grocery, or just sometimes just regular grocery store like we're accustomed to. So if you can't do, or for proximity issues, but at the same time, like, I remember there was one. This is like one of the things I think I didn't even told you, but I told like everybody around me to stop buying meat there. I think the shop closed eventually because, like, okay, I was buying pork at a shady market, but proximity was like, okay, it's just there, and I'm lazy as half, so it's like, nah, I'll just buy it there, and usually she's got good
Wait, hold
custom
on, hold on.
price.
Wet market or like actual supermarket?
No, it was a semi-wet market, like a wet cart. Let's put it as a wet cart.
Oh man.
Yeah, a wet cart. Anyway, besides the point, I knew her, she knew me, and so far so good. So far so good.
Okay.
But at one time, I brought the piece at home, start cutting it, and then I noticed that like I sliced the piece and there was like mucus. And I remember because my stepdad used to be a butcher, and he said whenever you see mucus inside meat, it's usually because it's a sign of cancer, and if you see that, it means that the problem with like quality selection or quality supervision, wherever you bought that from, the slaughterhouse didn't do the right, like they didn't do their job. I was like, okay, so potentially that place doesn't have a slaughterhouse, so she just randomly brought things. I was like, oh my god, this is bad. And I was like, no, she actually brought it from like a frozen thing from large. Anyway, I was like, oh man, so this cancer in that meat. I was like, oh, like imagine wet markets. Like that was a wet card, but at least she had kind of a form of supplier. So you can imagine that wet markets can be even lower than that in terms of standards. You have no clue what you're getting. The only thing you know is that it's fresh or whatever you mean by fresh. There's
Well, they're
no
usually live. They're usually live.
sometimes, not
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
all
mean,
the
yeah.
time.
But
And
I mean,
again, and again, like we'll close that thing because this we can dive in that thing like for an hour, but like there are no incentive for someone to go there unless you have nothing else to do in your day. Like no reason for you to go there because like they have clean supermarkets, you can buy the same meat and sometimes cheaper in a grocery store. There's no reason for you unless you want fish. I would agree that fish might be Like if you live close to the sea, like I used to, like fair. But
Yeah,
me,
okay.
you have no reason to do that, to buy from a random dude screaming with his like ice blocks under his like wooden table. You know, wood, right? Like wood, the things that bacteria
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
live
yeah.
on, like wood. Wood is a natural bacteria repellent, like we all know that. like, like we all know that. So again, there's no reason for that. And my stepmom used to blame my stepdad, like, don't buy meat in these places. You're gonna make us sick. And they're like, she makes a very good point. She makes a very good point.
Oh
She
man.
knew, she knew, and she lived there, and she knew. She's like, don't touch that. Like, don't. And even fried meat or processed meat, like no, no, like, because she knew that if I was gonna get sick, she would take care of me. She's like, okay, like, don't eat any of that garbage. It's like, okay, I'm not touching any. Fair.
Yeah. Point
Yeah.
being, again, but this also lends way to the incompetence of the party state to shut this shit down.
Yeah, because again, we understand uh, that some places, especially in very deep rural areas, might not have the chance to get supermarkets, which is okay. Like we get it, we get it. Maybe some places have no choice but to sell and buy livestock for sustenance. We get it, but you're in Wuhan. Like, are you telling me that you're telling me that you don't have any other form of store, grocery, butcher shop that you can go to buy that? No, you have to expose yourself to germs, bacteria, and people washing their tables right in the middle of people selling fruits on the other stand. So like, oh yeah, no, there's no cross contamination there. Like, are you out of your mind? Like, never happened. Like when you see this, like why would you go there? I get that it's a cultural habit that people used to go out in the morning and do their shopping. Good, I get it. For vegetables and things, sure, I'm all for farmers market. Don't get me wrong. But when you get like don't get me wrong. But as soon as you cross the line to these kinds of perishables, like no, like this is my life, and food poisoning is not something I want to deal with on a regular basis. So no, just no. And I once saw a guy selling milk. I was like, man, this guy, like, you can't be serious right now. Like,
Fresh
and then
milk.
and it's fresh and it's whole. I was like, yeah, there's parasites in that, my friend. Like, there's like that if the teats are not cleaned properly, you can have parasites in that. Like I was like, man, what are you doing? Like, and the party, and go back, circle back to the party. Like, yeah, the party let that happen because let's face it, this would be too much micromanagement that they're actually able to handle. Although they could, but it's all about where. In Beijing, I recall, like you won't find much of these anymore. Very rare. And I
Don't think,
recall in
I don't
20
think you, yeah.
during the Olympics, I remember they had like nighttime police that they just unleashed in some districts, and you would see vendors running down the street with their cars. Like I remember, and I saw the same thing in Shanghai. Although people got caught, and you can hear the sound of wood and bone meeting. But when you have oof, and you can feel like
Yo,
it
that was
hurts, when you hear it.
what?
It hurts. But again, it depends on where you are. So larger cities have capabilities to implement these kinds of regulation, and where people have become more accustomed to contemporary lifestyle, I guess you could say it like that. Although, like, you mean, like, no offense for traditionalism, like, no offense, but people are more inclined to accept the fact that these places shouldn't exist, which is, it's all fair. And then you go back to Wuhan. It's like, okay, so Wuhan is a second. I think no, I think it's a second tier city. So technically, this kind of thing should have been phased out over time. Like, you really wonder why. Like,
But this is a good point, right? Because the overall theme of COVID and how China dealt with COVID is that it's not the party is not doing things out of malice. It's they can't do things because they're incompetent. So it's not that
and that
they
was
let.
my yeah, and that was my point all along. I told that, like, I remember during the first interview, like, but like having malice or bad intent is worse. Like, no, incompetence is much worse. Like
There's no
malice,
end.
like because there's no end. You never know where it ends. Like where does it end? Like where does inefficiency stops? Like where? And this is you never know. But malice is like, okay, you've poisoned a few people, you made your case, but like no man, incompetence and inefficiency is the worst, like by far. And again, regulating that might fall under one of these categories. Like you would face too much social unrest, and like if you face too much social unrest, doesn't look good on you. And then like maybe provincial level cadres are going to look at what you're doing, they're going to be upset, and then you're going to be transferred somewhere else, and they're just going to replace you with someone who's going to play ball and just let that happen. Same thing with illegal coal mining. Same thing. Like if people are running along with that, you're not going to change that right now. That's not how it's going to happen.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point to like make clear, right? It's this, and this is okay. Now we can move into into what happened in COVID,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think the first thing we got to get right is that the chain of information from the on the ground to, I guess, Beijing it's a very long chain with multiple problems along the way, and this is, I mean, it's reflective of the structure of the party state, but it's a problem that accumulates and does damage with each step of the way.
and and again, yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, what people tend to forget because they live in the Western world and they feel like everything should be straightforward. Like, no, this is so not how it should be, like at all. The problem is here, like you never want to be the first one to, yeah, okay, to be the first one to report, because if you make a mistake, you'll be in for a world of hurt. So again, at first, when they started to see, like, let's say, symptoms that look like pneumonia or influenza, like, who wants to have the task? Like, who will say, like, okay, I'm down, I'm down to just ring the bell and claim that this might be a potential like health hazard and we need to take dramatic measures. Who wants to do that? No one wants to do that. And that's why sometimes there are delays in reports because nobody can agree like how or who should take the blame. Because if you mess up, if this ends up being wrong, and if it's just influenza or let's say a I don't know, like food contamination, and then there's like bacterial pneumonia, and then I don't know, something like that. Like your career is over, and everybody that supported you, career is over. Like everyone will be punished. So you need to be very careful how you report and what you report, and that's why um, the doctor who became a martyr eventually, I think his name was. Let me find it. I had it
The WeChat
here.
dude, right?
Um, Oh yeah, Li Wenliang. The problem with these people is not that the fact that they did their job in the party. I mean, they did what they did. It's just the problem is with whistleblowers. Well, first, the system cannot handle whistleblowing. Like it doesn't work. You cannot do that. The system is not made to handle whistleblowing. No, they will just see it as a cadre that's trying to go out of the ranks, and potentially you could be you can make a mistake. So that's even worse. So don't do that. Second, whistleblowing is sometimes associated with like rumor mongering, and that's a big problem because you never know which rumor is true, and at the same time, people don't understand how the system works. Just think about the sheer amount of people that you need to deal with, and the amount of rumors that can emerge at any single day on literally anything. Just think about that for a second, because I remember like, okay, we'll skip a few months, but like I think in February or even March, people were already rolling out like for example, like, oh yeah, you can cure yourself with this kind of thing and this kind of thing. Like, no, like this is actually this can be poison, but the rumors were saying that it could work. So you need, unfortunately, for actual whistleblowing, the party is not equipped to manage and distinguish between what is true and what is not true in a timely manner. So so the Leninist state, like the way it works is like, okay, if I can't distinguish, or I can't, let's say, find what's true or not true, then I will just crush everything equally. And that's good for some things, and it's very bad when the situation is true.
Yeah. I think another thing that again on the rumor mongering thing, um, I don't remember where the just jumping ahead a couple of months when like COVID was like kind of rampaging across the world. I don't remember where it first started, this kind of craze over toilet paper. I just remember because I'm here in Hong Kong, and I just remember one time I stepped into a grocery store and there was just no toilet paper left, and apparently this was because there was a rumor going around online that the raw materials for toilet paper would all be diverted to for the production of face masks. And because of one rumor, literally all the toilet paper in Hong Kong was sold out for like a week. So again, like this type of rumor mongering is like, even a society like Hong Kong, which is not fully free nor fully China, it can't handle it. And just imagine this scale in China, a country of 1.4 billion, with a very vibrant social media and like a online community. Uh, the party it doesn't have the resources nor the know-how to sift through this kind of information.
Exactly. And again, like, some people have millions of followers, so if you start a rumor, like, this, it's gonna get out of hand very, very fast. So unfortunately, the party needs to react in a certain way to make sure that a mayhem doesn't break out in a matter of minutes. So that's unfortunate for people like Li Wenliang, who are caught in the midst of all of that, trying to do the right thing. But doing the right thing inside the party state structure is always very, very difficult. Just like reporting grain production or stuff like this, it's always difficult because the system doesn't really allow you to speak freely. So it's always complicated. And even when, okay, let's say you get up a few notch above, and then people are actually aware of what's happening. Um, they're allowed to act when other people afterwards have made a decision, because you cannot really do something, because again, the chain of command is made so that depending on where the mistake is made, everybody downwards will just pay for that. So you need to be very careful. It's kind of a game of it's a very, very, very long game of hot potato. So you need to make sure that the potato reaches the end of the line, and then the decision is made away, and then the decision is not yours anymore. So mistakes is definitely like you didn't do anything wrong there. And this is why sometimes crisis management is extremely difficult, because nobody wants to take the first step. They need to wait, or they want
And
to
yeah,
wait.
and the problem is, by the time it reaches the top echelons of the party state, it's who knows how long it's been. I think a week is a bit short. I think like if they can get something to the top of the party and then a decision from the top of the party, transfer it all the way back down to the ground within a month, that's pretty good. So again, again we should reiterate that people shouldn't see this as kind of evil doing on the part of the Communist Party. Is just simply the fact that this system is not designed for fast responses. That said, this system is really good at building bridges and roads. It is fucking dog shit at responding to crises. And I mean, historically and in contemporary China, this is true. Every time there's some kind of crisis, they've always been slow to respond, and the response has always been quite haphazard and fragmented. And it's unfortunately just a feature of this particular political system.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but the initial response, once it started, I think early January, when they really started to clean up the streets and stuff like that. Although, to be fair, like when they did that, they kind of like buried the mystery of the wet market, because like once they clean up the mess, I mean, the externalities of the mess, which was identified as the market, once that was cleaned, like there was no way that we would ever know what exactly happened in the market. So that was the first thing. And then once it starts spreading, like I don't know how long it took for people to understand that it could propagate from human to human, but like at the beginning, when there were reports on the ground, like you could clearly see, without necessarily have the validation, that yeah, most likely it can propagate from human to human. And when they really, yeah, I mean, probably. And then at some point, you know when they started to implement quarantine, uh like people were fleeing, and this caused even more cases. But uh the way this was handled afterwards, you can say that once the party is involved, it can really respond and implement dramatic containment measures. And then people's like, can we learn something from that? It's like, the answer is no. No, you can't. Because you cannot. No, because you can't do that here. Like, this is never going to fly. Like, you need to live in a different world for that to work. Like, there's no way first, you don't have the means to do that. You don't have the the capabilities or the people that you can mobilize to do that. There's no way.
You don't have the legal right to do it under most
Like,
constitutions.
exactly, you don't have the rights to do that. So, like, can we learn? Like, I mean, yeah, I guess if you want to say like how to actually massively contain, yeah, sure. But in terms of replicability, no, no, you can't. No, you can't. There's nothing to learn from that, except that they went for the, let's say, the easiest of measures, like making sure that everybody would stay home for so long that all the clusters would just die out over time, which was in effect pretty successful. Like, for that, yeah. But can we do that? No. And that's why we have so much problems in managing the pandemic here, because different mentality, different structure, different legal system.
Yeah. I, to be fair, the human cost in Wuhan was pretty bad. And like you mentioned earlier with the quarantine thing, I don't remember if I mean I don't know if anyone remembers this, but basically what happened was the was it the provincial or the municipal government announced a lockdown, but they did it with like a few with like time left for people to bail. I
Yeah,
can't
there was
remember how.
that was the I think it was a municipal government, but that's irrelevant, because like they did the same thing. They did the same thing in UK recently, and nobody batted an eye. Like, people just left. I was like, yeah, but at the same time, it's like you need to give people a heads up, otherwise it's even worse.
No, but the thing is particularly problematic in China because the sheer volume of movement and the avenues to move from like within the country. The high speed rail network really works to their disadvantage at this point because it allows them to literally go anywhere. And then you also had cases of like people just being absolutely stupid where they're like fucking taking medicine to artificially lower their temperature and then getting on
Yeah, I
flights
mean, yeah,
like
escaping that. But like, okay, we can. I mean, if we just go down just the road of the cause and how it how it happened, like there are several ways to explain how it happened. Like, okay, some people are really focused on the virus research centers, and I get it, because you really want it to be that, because this is the best conspiracy ever. Like, you really want it to be a bioweapon. I get it, because it makes for a better story. Like, I get it, sure. But but
key
no,
point.
exactly, key point. But knowing where the scientific development of, let's say, biology and stuff like this is currently, and assessing the work that comes out of the Academy of Science, like, you're left with wondering, yeah, can they really do that? I mean, I'm still like on the no camp. Like, no, they don't have the like, if you're talking about people who have dealt with these kinds of things for decades, for example, in USSR and Russia, so yeah, probably they could, like, create real weapons. Yeah, sure. Is the the Chinese weapon system that advanced? No, definitely not. So if you want it to be that lab, the explanation that you would have to go with probably is human error, like studying, or maybe, for example, like disposal of laboratory waste, protective clothing, or plastic glove that should have been burned, but for an unknown reason that wasn't managed properly, and then it gave way to local or ecological transmission. That could be your best case scenario. Like if you really want it to be the lab, that's probably it. Or they were studying it again, ventilation issues, stuff like that. Like again, no malice, but human error, deficiencies and inefficiencies in waste management. You know that collecting garbage in China is still like a massive undertaking. So put that and then apply that problem to like biohazard waste. And then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I get it now. Like, do they actually have treatment plants for that are properly located? Are the trucks really made to transport these kinds of things? Could have things fallen down the truck? I mean, see, like you're left with so many like chains in the equation that could have gone wrong because of inefficiencies, that in the end, like you want it so bad to be like an evil ploy. But like if you look at it this one, like I mean, statistically speaking, it's much more likely that this happened exactly like this.
And the problem is that this is reflective of kind of like a general narrative that occurs in mainstream media that tries to paint China as this kind of like plotting, you know, very like kind of like an evil mastermind kind of thing. It's not. It's not. It's a chaotic system where sometimes they pull off a win, and the times that they pull off a win, it's really rare, and it's just random
Oh,
variables bumping
oh,
into each other. Sometimes it produces a
oh my
outcome,
God.
and but that's what it is, right? Like most of the times, it's just incompetency mixed with stupidity and bad and well, good ideas with bad intentions, I guess. But all in all, I think all in all, it's we can't we don't see Chinese tech being capable of producing a bioweapon of this size, and it's just
It's like you would try to reprimand like a kid for doing something wrong, but they're not doing it with malice. Like they broke the window with a rock. Yeah, man, like come on. And I'm saying it's like okay, and that's the saying also, like you cannot like, because like here we have troubles, we have like massive problem in like managing the whole thing, like okay, we should blame our authorities, but that at the same time does not like absolve the let's say culprit in terms of early days mismanagement. Like that's not what we're saying. Is like mismanagement is not ill intended. It's just because it's the system is not able to do it right. So it's not like you can blame inefficiencies. Sure, you want to pinpoint a certain person to be blamed. That's never gonna happen. You want to say that oh, they did that on purpose. Like no, like it cost them billions in terms of economic damage and like social unrest. Like what you don't see is like the real cost on the Chinese system. Like local cadres, some people have died in like riots when people wanted to go out and get some food. So like that was definitely not a good time to be a party cadre in some regions. Like definitely not. So saying that this was all a cruel plan to sell masks and stuff, like really seriously, like if this is what you're going with, like that regardless of all of that, they manufacture most of the medical equipment that we use, like regardless of that. So that becomes insane, that you feel like okay, that it was a plot, it was planned. Like hold on, you're giving them way too much credit, like way too much credit.
yeah. Let's not attach agency to where there is none. And, I think the mass is a good point to move on to kind of like the next big thing, and it's not really a specific event; it's more kind of the culmination of various a series of events throughout 2020, and it's kind of the rising aggressive stance that China has taken on the global stage with regards to kind of how they conduct their diplomacy with this so-called like wolf warrior diplomacy that's been going on for I guess the most of 2020 with people like Zhao Yijing,
Jian.
yes,
Yeah.
taking Twitter. Then what's that chick's name?
Hu or Hua Chunying or something like that.
Yeah, and them taking
You
to
know that
Twitter.
her husband died because I think he also fell off a building.
Right. That's another matter to go into for another day.
I know. Just always keep in mind, window ledges, bad place to be. Very unsteady. Very unsteady.
Especially when the CCDI is chasing you.
Bro, they make buildings shake. It's like an earthquake.
Yeah, so you got all these like senior Chinese diplomats that are kind of basically talking shit to other countries, and
Yeah.
could we, like, I guess again this goes back to this like the various systems within the party state and the kind of propaganda and the wider foreign affairs system is, again, like we said before, it kind of has a mind of its own in that it tries to portray, it tries to understand what the party at large feels and then I guess express it out into the world, which unfortunately, because there's no dialogue back and forth, sometimes it goes to places that the party does not like. But in this case, it just straight up hurts China's national interests. And but at the same time, it does fall in line with the recent discourse, the kind of conservative, independent discourse raised by
Amazing China.
yes, and
Yeah.
the various slogans that he's come up with over the years, and yeah, I think it's interesting to look at or kind of like explain to a certain extent why China has become more aggressive diplomatically, and ultimately, I mean, to be fair, ultimately it hurts their own national interest because then it's, nobody wants to do any business with you, and people are kind of are going to be hostile towards you. But explain
I
it
mean,
from
what we have dubbed, I think what you have dubbed um, crying foul policy, like the crying foul diplomacy, which is basically what it is. It's actually exactly what it is. Like, but the reason and the logic behind is mostly, let's say, without falling into a trap of being too China bashing, but like, okay, let's go back to 2013. Xi Jinping comes to prominence, and then he rises through the ranks, and then becomes, well, the number one. Well, his idea and view on what the party is, the objective of the party, and how the party should behave are dramatically different from what we have seen before. And he's mostly in line with saying okay, after more than 3 decades of reform, we're definitely a stronger state, and we should affirm our national interest. And see, this is where the problem is, because national interest can be several things, and if the national interest for someone is that's more on the conservative side and more prone to, let's say, working with ideology, it's definitely going to be to defend your position as a state, not necessarily to secure alliance resources or whatever, which should be what you're looking for. But if you're looking for just, let's say, taking no shit from anyone because you're the best and you're a strong state, then I mean, this makes sense. And it's also, let's say, a very Maoist view of how diplomacy should be conducted. Like, okay, you feel like you're on top because you've managed a pandemic. I mean, again, depending on how you want to see it, you've managed it. You went through that, and other people are just managing because they're weaker state. They're incapable of like really managing the whole thing. So you're on top, so you can talk down to them because you're in a good position. You should do that. That's a really, like, it's a really 1950, 1960 way of seeing things. And in the end, this is, let's say, the continuation of implementing Xi Jinping's thought in diplomacy, at large. But who's responsible for doing that is definitely Wang Huning, who's the vizier of the party and managing ideology and the spiritual civilization leading group, which is still like I still don't understand why this exists because like this led this led to so many issues in the 80s and the 90s, but this still exists today. And he has a way of seeing like for example, I don't have a counterexample for a US president, or I think Barr would be a good example, like someone who sees the presidency as something that should be revered and that should be more presidential and executive and monopolizing power inside the system to a certain degree, like more like anyway, I think you get what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So and Wang Huning is one of these people, like seeing the presidency and the party structure as being paramount and against the decentralization that happened in the 90s and the early 2000s under Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao, like against this movement of giving power to provinces, bringing it back home, bringing ideology, because he can see that people are not buying it anymore, so we're just gonna shove it down even more. And that was kind of his job with all of the three represent was Wang Kuning and the Armenian society, the scientific development, all of that is him. So he's kind of like spanning all this time thinking about ways to sell party ideology, and now we're just circling back to a more conservative Maoist view of things. So this is what is being pushed through, although the party like might not agree with everything that comes out of that. It's hard to control because like you open fires, like okay, defend the country and don't take shit, and make sure that if there are aggressors, like you respond in kind. But then it gives rise to people like Zhao Lijian, for example, that are saying things that are sometimes so detrimental that you'd be like, wow, was that planned?
I, yeah, I just wanted to say, like, to give a bit of context, this would be similar to something like the U.S.'s unitary executive theory, whereby the U.S. president, in kind of a legal framework, should have entire control over the executive branch. But imagine this applied, but to not just the executive branch, but to basically all matters of state. Um, not that not that the party state has a separation of power, so that doesn't even really matter. But it's ever expanding the seat of the president within the system. And uh, to be fair, a lot of these kind of like conservative ideology, conservative thinking under Wang Huning has, in part or in large part contributed to the prolonged U.S.-China trade war. Because that deal could have been signed much earlier, but the hardline conservative stance that was taken by the party against probably the wishes of someone like Liu He definitely prolonged it for a much longer time than it could have took to conclude. And this kind of like now we're seeing this being applied in the diplomatic space, and we began with the mask and the subsequent vaccine diplomacy now, but with the mask diplomacy where China, the first to have the pandemic under control, was basically giving free medical equipment to other countries as a sign of kind of like good faith. But I guess to a certain degree, the party forgot about how the world really viewed China as a geopolitical actor, and I don't think any state received, like, nobody saw this as a genuine like offering. You know what I mean? Like, people saw this as kind of like, oh, you're just trying to win brownie points with us, kind of thing. And to be fair, the party did fuck up because they did try to offer a bunch of equipment to countries along the Belt and Road, which was just so painstakingly obvious. What you were trying to do is that you were trying to exchange medical equipment for possible better for better future access to these countries, and then like continue to plot your Belt and Road along the way. So once this mass diplomacy was kind of shunned by the global community, if you will. They really started taking a hardline stance, at least virtually on Twitter, especially. These Chinese diplomats really started as talking shit to like heads of state and then tagging like ministries and stuff, which to be fair is pretty funny if you're just watching it from the sideline. But
Oh wait, it was very funny, and but at the same time, you really wonder like have you thought this through? Because you're really like you're really saying these things to someone that is hosting you as a diplomat, and you're like, okay, you have diplomatic immunity, but like let's not kid ourselves and like just take it easy a little bit, just dial it down, because at some point you might touch a nerve and people will be, let's say, very unforgiving about what you said or what you did. Especially I'm talking about Australia, for example. I don't recall if it was Jolly or not, but most likely because
it was jolly. Yeah.
yeah, you see it sounded like typical like Jaw thing. And like that image, I was like, and then he asked for an apology. I was like, bro, like, oh, like, okay, just do your
Even
circus thing, but don't go and
but
push it to like
that's
you need
not
to
even the
apologize. I was
worst.
like, wow.
That's not even the worst. The worst was when the U.S. shut down the Houston consulate. That had direct consequences.
Yeah, but that was very in tune. Sure, but that was very in tune with like what they're doing right now, like some McCarthyism, trying to crack down on party agents. So this was very in tune with that. Although it wasn't the place to be, let's say, closed. That was not the main hub, but it was a sign. It's like, okay, party agents are no longer welcome here, and this just follows and through the departization of some institution across the U.S. I mean, which is fair. I mean, when you look at the cases that they brought forward, it's kind of very fair. And this could only have happened in democratic system, that like it could have gone on so long, because like the party would never accept that on their own soil, like at all. Like this would never apply, like at all. But like we accept it, and like the decision of closing, for example, all the some Confucian Institute, I was like, I was very puzzled by that decision, because like who listens
Who
to a
cares?
Confucian? No, but like who listens to a Confucius Institute? Like I'm like are they bringing you billions of dollars? They're bailing you out like as a school, so you need to be compliant. Like I don't think so. Like like I remember, and you weren't there at the time, but like they offer just very small amount of money to set up these institutions, and in turn they're not funneling like millions and millions of dollars. So I'm really puzzled by some of the response, like, oh yeah, they're doing that on campus. Yeah, just don't pay attention to them. They have no pull whatsoever. Like what are you doing? Like they're like, what are the like what kind of influence? Like they're not, like, for example, like they're not even invited to like councils and department meetings for political science. I recall we had like hardcore like anti-China people. Like it never mattered. Like you make it matter much more than it is. Like you did that to yourself. Like you listened to that institution because you want to. Like you partake in your own abuse, pal. Like they're definitely not footing the bill like enough for you to be like, yeah, really, thank you, master. Like, and I was reading an article this morning, like, okay, apparently China funneled around like 24 millions over years in the US. And I was like, okay, so this is what you're making a fuss about? $24 million? That's
over over
that's peanuts. That's nothing. Like like I mean, I was like, wow, like okay, I was ready for like, okay, 500, 600, 700 millions, like to buy real estate, like massive amount, like something that could be, like getting some leverage. And I was like, bro, like just the real estate park of Harvard only is worth like what, hundreds of millions of dollars.
probably.
And then you telling me that they funnel $24 million over a number of a year to institutions. I was like, come on,
Really
like
nothing.
you can't be real. Like $24 million, like one of the projects that we did. Like I remember we did like our partnership grant was around $1 million, and it was wasted in a year. I remember that, And a million is it's nothing. It's nothing. Like the petty corruption that they were able to do with that is still unbelievable to me. Like I get it. Like from a Chinese perspective, it was a lot because with the cases that we've seen in China, like some people are getting life sentences for like decades of corruption that were able to like, oh yeah, I made like 1 million yuan. I was like, wow, you risk your entire life for peanuts, man.
Well,
Like either you do it right or you don't do it. Like either you do it right.
they just handed Lai Xiaomin a death sentence. I think today or yesterday. I think so. There you go. But
But you see,
he had like a couple hundred mil. I think probably close to a bill.
yeah, but some of them are good, or they're more inventive. Some of them are good, like the guy who had a ton of gold. You know, I
Physical
think
gold in his basement.
yeah. I think it was the Haikou guy in Hainan. I
Yeah,
was like, man, like at least he worked for it. Like that, I respect. At least he made it worth it. But
bro.
again, gold is dumb because like how can you liquidate gold on a market that is
Bro,
restricted?
that shit
Like that
is
was just
heavy.
so dumb.
Dude, that shit is heavy to
But
transport.
no, but not only that, like the state would notice immediately that somebody's liquidating gold from anywhere. Like they would know. Like he could just like he's just enjoying his gold basically because it's kind of worthless. Like there's no way nobody would accept to trade gold because then they would be stuck with trading gold back for cash and then they would be interrogated. So like, come on, like no one would take that, which is
And
like
the funniest thing is that it was like gold bricks, like gold bars.
Yeah, it was gold bars. It was a ton of gold
Sell
bars.
that shit.
Bullion, bro, bullion. No, you can't because like it's stamped. So you're like wherever you go with that, you are doomed.
Oh,
Yeah,
um,
but all of that to circle back to, let's say, the wolf warrior diplomacy. I mean, this is just because they're cornered. It's a bad situation also, and they're just doubling down, doubling down, doubling down. And to be fair, like after August, they calmed down because they realized that if we're gonna make this work long run, like we can't be just spitting fire and hate at everyone. So everything that's gonna be domestic, we're still gonna be very combative on that, but with the U.S. and European Union, and we're going to kind of tone it down. But at the same time, it's hard to untangle the Hong Kong issue from the U.S.-China relationship. It's very hard. So it's like the party still thinks in the 1960s and the 1970s, like for these people we're going to act this way, and for these people we're going to act in a certain way. It's like, yeah, but the world is complex, pal. Like you can't just do that. Like that's not work. Like let's compartmentalize issues. Like we're not going to deal with that, and we're going to deal with that. Yeah, that's not how it works.
Yeah, we can move on to the Hong Kong matter now because I think this is a perfect transition, and
it's a perfect leeway into the Hong Kong national security law.
yeah, which it's. I mean, to be fair, it killed all the protests real quick. There's no more protests anymore. So,
well, let's go back in time to the catalyst of all of that.
Oh, jeez. Wait. Catalyst. The true catalyst.
Well, I mean, I would go back down the road of 1997, but we don't have the time for that. I think because that would be a long discussion. But let me try. Hold on. Let me just give it a try. Just a second. Like the main issue here, and despite the fact that Hong Kong has become unruly from this perspective of the party, which is true, the problem is that Hong Kong could have avoided all of that if they had implemented a national security law back in 1997, like Jiang Zemin asked. Because if it would have been done then, the party would have had much more issues, especially legal issues, and international scrutiny would have been completely different because like the party would have accepted national security law back then. See, that would have been a completely different story. But the party decided not to push, and Hong Kong decided not to do it. I'm not saying that Hong Kong is to blame, but if you look at how the party works, Like you don't leave open doors for the party to just ram you in, because like this is exactly what happened in the long run. But the recent catalyst I think you want to refer to is the extradition bill.
Yes. And the funny thing is, it had nothing to do with China. This was introduced because a Hong Kong dude killed his girlfriend while he was in Taiwan. And I believe, I didn't really read up on the issue, but it seems that Taiwan wants to extradite him. But Hong Kong's not allowing it because they don't have an extradition bill between the two jurisdictions. Now the problem is, if and this actually comes to the travel bubble issue as well. If Hong Kong was to sign an extradition bill with Taiwan, it cannot just sign one with Taiwan. Why? Because Taiwan is part of China. So, for that to work legally within the legal framework, they would also have to include a stipulation whereby extradition is also allowed to mainland China. And this is where the shit hits the fan. And then we all kind of know what unfolded. And then this ultimately culminated with the introduction of the national security law on July 1st, right?
I mean, it was discussed during the delayed two sessions in May, but yeah, the National People's Congress passed it. I think it was wasn't it on June? Wasn't it June?
I think June
It was June.
31st, and then took
Well, anyway,
effect.
it's kind of irrelevant. Although if it's on July 1st, it's a massive slap in the face to Hong Kong people. It's a massive slap in the face. But like you said, the problem was like people felt like it could have been detrimental. And again, if you read the language of the extradition treaty, you know what it's for. It could potentially be used for like let's say anti-party crimes, but the overall scheme of it was not that at all. Like you, of course, like the party could have used it a little bit this way, but now national security law is simply, let's
Much
say,
worse.
yes, it's much worse, because in terms of like managing speech and actions and behaviors, it's like it's exactly what the party would have liked. And again, like if you look at it from the party's perspective, like you don't understand why they were not happy with the entire extradition bill, because like okay, there's no way you can sign that with Taiwan because Taiwan is China, and then I'm giving you a chance to do that through me, and then you're upset because I could use that to potentially prosecute people that are defecating on the party state. I get it, but at the same time, they were seeing it as like, okay, you know what? We're like, this is kind of a gift we're doing. Like, we're giving you a gift because this is the smallest pain we can inflict on you right now. And that was clear the way it was written. And then at some point, it's like, okay, like, like there was riots and like, or protests, depending on how you see it. They can be peaceful protests or massive riots. It really depends on where you are on the spectrum of pro party, anti party. But then they came back with the national security law because like again they saw that as a favor. It's like we're giving you that to tone that down and police yourself. We're going to help you out. And this is why like people are sometimes like, oh no, it was ill-intended. It depends. If you see it from the point of view of the party, this is not the way they see it. It's just a matter of institutional control and, let's say, phasing out the two system into one country. That's as simple as that. It's not necessarily a thing of speech. It's about taming it and integrating, basically. So finishing what started back in 1997. So it's logical for them to do that.
It's I guess the overarching issue is, I mean, all the concern was, oh, does this necessarily end Hong Kong as kind of the gateway into China and its financial status within the region, right? That's what the concern was about. So far, there's no indication this has taken place. Um, Moreover, I think the reforms that have been rolled out within mainland China itself, if you want to point to greater threat to Hong Kong, it's these very reforms. I mean, even the phase one U.S.-China trade deal played into this, right? Because if China further liberalizes its financial system, which it has done throughout 2020 with series of reforms like removing the offshore investment quotas for foreign investors, um, and allowing foreign companies, not just American ones, to set up wholly owned subsidiaries onshore. Like these, this is why you're seeing all these foreign financial services firms, be they American, French, English, or Swiss, they're all setting up uh, onshore subsidiaries. Why? Because they can. And this is a bigger threat to Hong Kong because now it kind of bypasses Hong Kong. Like you don't need to go through Hong Kong to go to China anymore. Moreover, being in Hong Kong doesn't even afford you any kind of legal protections like they used to pre-national security law. So now the calculation for a lot of these foreign firms is, well, if I have the same level of legal and regulatory risk, why don't I just go right to mainland China? Because then I access the market directly, not through an intermediary that is Hong Kong. And if Beijing can make sure that the free port zone in Shanghai functions actually like a free port zone, and foreigners can use Facebook, whatever there, it's not really going to be a problem. And another thing I think people forgot is that Hong Kong is also a massive, shopping. The retail sector here is massive, right? For luxury items, because there's no or relatively low luxury tax on these things. I don't remember. I don't remember if there's no tax or just very low tax, but basically it was much cheaper as a mainlander to come to Hong Kong and buy foreign luxury products because it's cheaper here. But then I can't remember which month. I want to say like May or something. The Ministry of Commerce in China started handing out way more duty-free licenses to domestic importers. And this is just going to further do more damage because I don't need to travel to Hong Kong. I can go to Beijing. I can go to Shanghai. I can go to Wangfujing in Beijing to buy my shit. I don't need to, fly or.
Let's put it this way: the damage here is really to, let's say, Westerners who, I mean, of course, the locals, but like, why people are so upset is because like they loved to go there without having to go to China to begin with. That was the main thing. Like you get the best without having to go just a little bit further. But now, like you said, with they're all setting up shops in Shanghai most of the time, or I mean, Singaporean institutions are very big in like Wenzhou, for example, in Kunshan, places like that. But like, yeah, in Zhejiang and Jiangsu and places like that. So the need for a middleman that used to provide more incentive and being more in tune with the system will, I mean, unfortunately, be phased out at some point. Because like, why would you go there? I mean, and be further away from the chain of command, or further away from, if you want to interact with officials, although it's complicated, but could be easier if you're set up in Shanghai or in Beijing. Although I would strongly recommend against doing that. But like, you know what I mean? So it's very like, why people, and then removing the special status, the U.S. did. I mean, again, this just shows who's upset about the situation. Yeah, the locals are definitely upset because they're going to be swallowed whole. Yeah, sure, but I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Like, this was going to happen at some point. Like, they knew this was going to happen. If you felt like, oh no, we're going to negotiate in 2049, or like after the period is over and like we're going to transition to a different system, like, man, you're kidding yourself. Like, you knew this would happen. Like, it's just a matter of time. And if the party changes its mind, then I mean, it's just bad. It's just sad for you because you didn't anticipate that the party could go back on its word, because it doesn't really need to follow these rules, especially not because it considered Hong Kong to be such a major, I mean, it's such an important part of China. So again, like, you had to know that this would happen at some point. And people who were like, oh no, we didn't expect it, like really, you didn't expect that to happen, like really?
but it does also effectively shut down any talk of kind of peaceful reunification between China and Taiwan, right? Like this is pretty much off the table now, unless I guess the internal party culture can change to become more liberal over the subsequent changes in leadership. But even then, this is like maybe 2, 3, 4 generations down the line before this can even be, um, proposed again to Taiwan. And I think we wrote about this too, is that as subsequent generations of Taiwanese, like local Taiwanese, as they go through life, the attachment to mainland China is going to become more distant, right? Because you're going to be generations separated from when whether or not the family came during as part of the first one of the first large migrations was during the Ming dynasty and then subsequently Qing dynasty and then obviously after 49. Like sooner or later this lineage is going to be so far removed that there's not going to be any kind of actual ties to mainland China aside from the fact that you know ethnically you guys are the same and then you have very very similar cultures and then you speak more or less the same language. Like sooner or later this bond is going to be lost and the party doesn't seem to be very competent at maintaining this kind of relationship.
No, it's definitely not. And the problem is, like, again, not being pro or against Taiwan, but that was one of the critical mistakes that the party made in 1949. Like like now you're at a stalemate that it's like it's an impasse. It's like if you use force, you're losing what you're trying to get, which is Taiwan as an economic powerhouse. Like if you bomb it out, it's like like what's the point? Like why would you do that? Like that's not what you want. You want the investment structure, financial system, like international recognition of time. Like this is what you want. You don't want to just like send over a wave of, of of soldiers to just murder everyone. Like that's so counterproductive. And I think the party is really stuck because considering how the Korean War played out, uh, they don't really know what else to do, like except sending a human wave and then praying that in the end one Chinese soldier will still be standing. Like this is not how this is going to play out. And
Also,
yeah,
like the military solution is it's unless somehow the top leadership of the party just goes absolutely insane, this is not going to happen. I don't understand why there are so many people who are scared that like China's going to launch an all-out war. The downside, there's literally no upsides for the party because let's not forget the fucking U.S. fleet is also there. Like they're going to bomb.
Let's put the fleet aside. Let's say you do that. Let's say you go down that road. Like you're gonna have to deal with decades of counterinsurgency, riots, protests. You're gonna have to sunk billions in infrastructure for surveillance, police. Like just see it this way. Like how long will you be able to hold that? Like like bro, like the locals will never like comply. So it's gonna be worse than France under Pétain. You're gonna have like tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people protesting. Like you can't kill everyone. Like that's not how it works. You want these people to be part of China. You don't want to just an empty island. Like if that's what you wanted to begin with, then why are we not talking about just depleting the whole place? Because that's not what they want, and they're stuck because they have no clue how to resolve that issue.
And we can't forget even Chiang Kai-shek when he went there, he had a problem governing there too with
exactly. Exactly.
It's never gonna fucking work. I don't understand why this is still talked about as an option. It's like I guess it's like
you know exactly why, you're just not saying it. It's all about the face. It's all about face. You can't let it go. You can't let it go.
I think there's definitely like the only way for this to move forward on this topic is for the party to offer like massive concessions, which they're not going to do. So
yeah,
like,
but even then, what is it worth to get concession from the party?
Nothing, because they already shown that they're not going to hold their word. So it doesn't even.
See, exactly. So you're right back at like, yeah, you're right back at like square one. Like, because again, it's never gonna happen. And I always feel it's always very funny to see, for example, the Taiwanese army, like, oh yeah, we're waiting for them, like bring him, bring him. I was like, dude, like you don't know what can happen. Like, okay, you are trained, you are potentially better equipped, but the problem is just the sheer number. Like like just that statistically says that you're gonna lose. And that's like, but again, you do that, like, it's just it's a mess. And concession aside, I don't know why people are still hooked on that. Because if the party does that, like the U.S. will respond, and then this will trigger an arms race, and then the party is going to have to sunk enormous resources to somehow catch up, and then you're going to end up in the same sort of issue of the USSR, like all your resources you're just diverted to arms, and then in the end, I mean, you're just playing against someone that has just so much more than you, and the deployment, the speed, like it would be just regime ending to do that. So I mean, I understand why they live in fear. I get it, because there's always a possibility that somebody goes rogue. Like there's always that, sure. But I mean, I don't see it happening. Honestly, I don't see it happening in 2022, between 2022 and 2027. I don't see it happening.
No. And again, also let's just raise a quick point regarding Hong Kong when
Yeah.
uh when it was like, was it this? I think it might have been last year. It was talked about this year again, but when the party was pushing like Macau as like the next shit, and then
Oh
like no
yeah.
that shit.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. To
Yeah.
replace Hong Kong, like, yeah. Oh man.
Anyone been to Macau? Macau is the most fucking depressing place ever. And I say this with all disrespect to Macau. That place is fucking. It's
With
so,
all disrespect.
dude.
Oh my god.
They want to set up a stock exchange in Macau? Are you fucking shitting me? Like, come on, man. Come on, bro. This is not gonna fucking happen.
I've heard that it's one of the saddest places in East Asia and Southeast. I heard it's one of the saddest places.
I had their fucking pork bun, dude. That shit was trash, bro. It wasn't even good.
Bro, but the egg tart were lit.
Bro, the egg tarts were fucking lit. The egg tarts were fucking lit.
See?
That was good. But what was also weird was like the fucking awful integration of the separate financial system of between Macau and Hong Kong. Like when I was there, I had trouble using my credit card there, even though like the conversion rate was almost 1-to-1. I don't understand like a lot of.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk financials, like, although this is not the point of it today, but like you and I both know, bro, as soon as you dish out, you whip out the credit card, nobody knows what to do with you. It's like, oh, what is that? That's an alien artifact. I was like, bro, like, you're a Japanese massive store. I'm coming here to spend like my quiche, and then you need to send me to another machine. The machine doesn't work. You need to call a supervisor, and just keep in mind, I want to give you money. I want to pay you, and you make it so hard for me to spend my money. So, I mean, if you're talking about just that, and then he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna merge Hong Kong and China, like the financial. It's like, are you out of your mind? Like, you cannot even open a bank account in less than half a day. Like, there's no way you have people that can financially engineer that thing. Like, there's no way that's happening. Like, pal, come on, come on, come on, come on. Like, what card is that? I was like, are you out of your mind? Look, it's written. It's a MasterCard. Like, it's on the card. Like, are you joking with me right now?
Which is also why I'm like confused.
like, oh, like what the hell?
Like, why is Amex moving in? I don't get it. Like, there's no market share to be gained. Like, it's nobody's going to use Amex.
And to be fair, like my friend, and I think you've got similar comments, and we'll close the e-payment. Like we'll dedicate an episode to e-payment later on. But
God.
like one of my friends said, like, like e-payment is so much more efficient. I was like, no, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's like you need to scan the thing. Oh no, wait. Take the phone, open the phone, scan the thing, and then you need to log. And sometimes, wait. Sometimes they have apps, so you need to log in the app of the store, enter the amount, send the amount, and then the dude's like, I need to confirm the amount. It's like, man, it's been 15 minutes. Can we go? Like, is it over? And then I told him, like, okay, and if your phone runs out of power, like you are like, what can you do? Nothing. And I was like, all I need to do is take my MasterCard, tap and pay, and I'm out of the store in a second. I don't need to have any human interaction with you. Scan a QR code, download your app. Like, I don't want like the Sunning app on my phone. Like,
But
no, no.
You forgot the biggest problem here is that like internet service within buildings in China is absolute garbage. So
Oh yeah, I know.
there's a lot of times where you just can't even open the app because it's not gonna load.
Exactly. And he was still like saying, oh yeah, but like, even farmers have that. Yeah, but like, what's the services we subscribed to last time was Square. Bro, I put the Square in my phone, you give me the card, tap the card, payment received. It's like you don't need like I need minimal connection, even in taxis. Like years ago, even when it was still like the early days of high-speed internet, like on the go, it was still working in a second because there's so little information like to transfer. So it's like I just tap my card and I'm out. And while you are still scanning the QR code because the phone was crooked when you scanned the first time, I was like, "Are you kidding me right now? Like, are you shitting me?" And then and you need to input the amount. Like, bro, I'm not inputting anything. Show me the machine. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to do anything to help you. Like, give me the amount on the machine. I'll pay, and you go. Like, that's as far as I'll go for interaction. Like, and then when he realized that, I was like, and he said, like, oh yeah, you're right. It's actually much more convenient. I only need the plastic, and I'm free to go wherever, whenever, for whatever. I don't even need the phone. I just need the card, and that's all I need.
Also, if you lose your phone, it's a wrap. It's game. It's game. If you lose your phone, you lose so much.
Oh, but the downside of losing your phone, oh man, this is bad. It's so bad. And I lose my card. I was like, okay, worst case scenario, like you're giving a few taps on me, I can contest it, and they're gonna remove that, and business as usual. I'm good. But you
Yeah.
lose your phone, you are dead, man. Like I have your whole life in my hands.
Yeah, it's very good to have it in China. Let's put it that way. Like
Yeah,
if you
you
have
you have to you have to have it. You have to have it.
like when I was there, if you had the whole system set up, I could buy anything I wanted with a tap on like WeChat Pay or Alipay.
Yeah,
Anything I want. Train tickets, whatever. But the problem is it's not really integrated anywhere else outside of China. So like if you go out of China and you don't have a credit card, you're kind of fucked. It's done.
yeah, but exactly, and I still feel like I don't understand why they skipped the credit card phase because it's so much more efficient. Because like
Oh,
you're at the
you
growth,
know why?
you
You
probably
know why? You
uh,
know why,
yeah,
bro?
because again, structural inefficiencies. Because I remember being stuck like at the grocery line, like okay, but this phone doesn't scan for the bills. Like, bro, we're gonna be here for a long time. Oh man. And then I realized, oh no, I have my foreign credit card. Like it's gonna be worse than her. If they can't handle her, I'm gonna be like, this is gonna be a shit show. Like it's gonna be bad. This is gonna be very bad. Oh man. Anyway, let's close that down and let's focus on something else.
I mean, speaking of e-payments, we should do a separate episode on just Alibaba because I think that's we have to talk about that. Like we don't have that much time left, so I don't think it's a good point. It's good right now to open into that because that's easily like a 30-40 minute discussion. just on Alibaba.
Have you
We'll
ever
do
used it?
what?
Have you ever used Alibaba?
No, but my
Like
girlfriend
the
uses it.
core, like the core website.
Yeah, my girlfriend uses it to like source stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. See, yeah,
Bro,
and I,
it's a nightmare.
oh yeah, it's
It's
I don't know. I don't get why people use that because like I think it was 2 years ago. No, it was last. Yeah, 2 years ago. Like when I bought my bumper plates and my barbell from there, like the amount of conversation I need to go through to get what I want is so tedious that I was like, just let's close that. I'm gonna go to a store. Like I was so close. Like I'm gonna take an hour ride to go to the develop the like the Xinkai Chu of the city, and I'm just gonna go there because like it was like, but what color? What like no, I just like you put a picture and a price. This is what I want. Don't ask me more. That's like I told you I wanted that. Like why are you dragging it
I
in other
seriously
directions?
they haven't
Oh,
improved the system at all since it was first established. That's how I feel like. I
like this is
guess
like this is good if you're really looking for a like 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 very good, like I wouldn't say good doesn't apply, but let's say a provider of things, like of large quantities to assemble other things, like it might be worth it because like okay, you go through the horrific process on of buying on Alibaba once and you get your things for your supply chain. Like, okay, but for smaller companies that are looking to buy things, this is a nightmare. Like, go on AliExpress. Like, it's going to be much easier. Although, to be fair, AliExpress is still like, sometimes, like,
Taobao is good. Taobao, Tmall, those are good.
still, but again, I hate all of
TV
these
is still the
equally.
best.
Like I said, I hate all of these equally for one reason because there's still too much interaction between the vendor and the person. Sometimes, not all the time, but on these occasions that you need to return something,
Oh
oh
man.
my god, it's like that's why Amazon would murder all of them, because like it's so complicated, and if they mess up your order, you need to still negotiate with the seller. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Like
Yeah.
ew, 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 ew. Like if like buying small stuff like Gangor, like stuff like that, like you can just like click and pay and it's fast. Like that's cool. But everything that requires measurement and attention, oh, you better be
Sure though.
ready.
You
Better
know
be
what
ready.
though? They have nailed down in China food delivery. Yo, that shit is
Oh yeah,
fucking
it's
that
massive.
is nailed
But
down.
are
That's
we
nailed.
are we actually diving down that road now, or we're going back to other things for the year review? Because like I feel we're going astray. We're going away from that.
I mean, we'll go into food delivery another day.
We're doing, yeah, because like okay, now we would be in August, which was the Beidaihe meeting. And again, nothing really important, to be fair. Like where things are more interesting might be more during the fifth plenum, talking about political security all the time, and people might not understand what that means. But again, it's when you're in a bad position, you talk about consolidating your position and talking about political security. And this is something that we've heard from like oh my god since the beginning, I think, or 2018 2019 it's becoming more prevalent because Xi Jinping is in a bad position inside the party. So when I read things like oh yeah, this year allowed Xi Jinping to become stronger within the system, like no, you don't understand how the thing works. It looks like that to you because as Young Zemin said, you might be too young or probably too naive to get it to get the point, but like people were flexing security are very insecure, and people were asking the army to be ready to fight at all time. Probably
Again today.
know that they have little leeway in the army, and they are just trying to, show that they are you know, they, they're in control, but like they're not that in control, and people are missing the point. Like the all-powerful she hold that thought. Like this, we're gonna come back. This is gonna be a special episode, like diving down that rabbit hole. But like people who feel this way are highly like have been misled, like dramatically. Like Like, no, he is not. He looks very powerful. He acts because he should. Like, you can act weak, like, obviously. But the fact that we see him very often is a problem in the party state structure. Remember, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao were not at the forefront of everything all the time. There's a reason for that, because when things are moving kind of okay, you're not supposed to see this guy. You're not supposed to. And again, talking about security and stuff like this, only, let's say, portrays like a situation that is not as good as it is. And recent promotion in like the provincial, like the governors and party secretary, are showing that like choices that have been made recently won't help for 2022. And it's also another expression I've used, like if you compare like Xi Jinping's roots inside the party are probably very wide across. Like they touch a lot of institution and inside the party state apparatus, but they're still shallow. And this is a huge difference that from him, let's say between him and Jiang Zemin, for example. But we'll come back like a special just episode on reflecting on the position of Xi Jinping inside the party state and what it means for the party state. But like again, don't feel like he's an all-powerful person inside the party. Like he is strong, yes, but I mean, you need to sparkle a lot of salt on that sentence to really get it.
Yeah, just talk about what the Beidaihe summer retreat is. I think this is a very I actually don't know if it's a China particular thing, but it is a very unique kind of setting within a unique system. Just try to like explain to people who are listening who might not be familiar with what this is.
Yeah, the Beidaihe summer retreat is a, let's say, kind of a summer vacation-ish retreat where political actors are invited to the Beidaihe district in Hebei. I forgot the city, but doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The point is like they will meet and discuss policy issues for the upcoming year. And sometimes businessmen will be invited, second generation Reds, so people that daughters and princes of the party will come and meet with Xi Jinping and potentially talk about the issues and stuff like that. But as she has made it very clear, he's not there to take the opinions of others, and he doesn't really value their opinions anymore. He's just doing this for the form. But again, this year, very few people actually went to the summer retreat, which is indicative of, its way in terms of decision making or policy making for the upcoming year. It was very quiet, and the main thing that we can like see, or at least let's say one of the main results of the Beidaihe retreat this year was this, let's say, the position of Hu Chenhua that was rethought, and perhaps I mean, he looked happy, so I mean, we'll see how that goes for him. But the second thing was really about foreign policy and the way it should be conducted, and this is when the okay, let's be tougher on domestic issues and let's be more accommodating with foreign powers, with especially U.S., European Unions, came out. So I think they realized they made some kind of mistake, but I mean, we didn't get anything from the economic front, although we expected it. We didn't get much from that. So the Beidaihe summer retreat this year was, let's say, like we were all expecting a lot of things, and in the end, not much came out of it. But it's usually it's made for that, for the elders of the party to regroup and also discuss with Xi Jinping issues, try to bring back China on the right track, depending on what the right track is. But yeah, that's basically it. It's a place for meeting with senior cadres, older cadres, and yeah, and sometimes again, second generation Reds and businessmen. But again, this year, I mean, not much came out of that.
So, like, I guess to close out 2020, aside from the plenum that was in, did we talk about the two meetings yet?
We haven't talked. Yeah, because it was in May. No, it was in May.
Was there anything special to come out of the two meetings?
Except the fact that this the civil code but the thing that stole the show was really the national security law.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
side note, two meetings is the meeting of the
The political the oh my god the
CC.
the CCPPC and the National People Congress.
Yeah, is two of the, I guess, National Penal Congress is the legislature, and then the Chinese CPPCC, so Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, is like an advisory body.
Yeah, we're sure.
Yeah,
Whatever.
it's a pretty, yeah. I guess moving forward, I guess the rest of 2020 was just about, like you said, gearing up for 2022. A lot of kind of shuffling on the political landscape.
Yeah.
So replacements of provincial party.
And I guess if there are two missing things from the review would be the RCEP and the common investment agreement, but I think we can dive back into that in a subsequent one because that would take more time. And I think since we're approaching 2 hours, I mean, we can't. It would take too long. It would take too long. So for the last few minutes, I think we can go back on e-payment anecdotes. We can go back on e-payment anecdotes.
I think okay, you could give like a quick rundown of the political landscape as we as we close down 20. That'd be very helpful.
I mean, on the provincial side, I mean, like some gains have been made for Xi Jinping, that's for sure. But a lot of people that have been promoted are secondary allies or allies of allies, and that's not a good sign because it means that people are trying to promote their own and not focusing on who is really associated to Xi Jinping directly. And this it's not a very good sign for him coming in 2021 because there's going to be a lot of more work to be done between now and 2022 to like promote additional allies for the 20th Party Congress. That's going to be a problem. In terms of ministry control, I mean, we're not there yet, and we still need to replace the Minister of Foreign Affairs. This is overdue, and I think there's much litigation over who should replace Wang Yi because they have no clue. And to be fair, right now, he's a very good scapegoat in terms of what's happening in terms of like propaganda and backlash, so that he's playing his part definitely as a scapegoat for the party right now. In terms of like looking at who's going to replace, let's say, for like or let's say who's up and coming for the standing committee, you have definitely Ding Xuexiang, who is one of the Mishu of Xi Jinping. You know, like we expect him to rise a little bit more, get more important responsibilities attributed in 2021. But a lot of people that are moving around, especially the army will have to pay very close attention because I think I wrote it in the review. Xu Qiliang has a very, very strong pull inside the army. Xu is very close to Xi, but at the same time, he has his own agenda. And it's not about politicizing the PLA, which is not really in tune with what she's trying to accomplish right now. So this might be a problem at some point. But the thing is, and I think I wrote it down in the report, choices for who's gonna be the replacement team for Xu Qiliang and what's his name again? Xu Qiliang. Oh yeah, Zhang Youxia. Have already been decided by Xu, so that's good because they're probably going to be pro Xi, but at the same time, it's definitely the allies of Xu Qiliang, and that for the perspective of like controlling the army through the party, that's a little bit that's not super good for Xi Jinping. So diving in 2021, we're going to see more reshuffling, especially around March. But we're going to come back to that later. But especially around March, we expect more reshuffling and more ministerial changes out ahead of 2023, because the next ministerial change will be in 2023. So ministers that have to go away now will be replaced within the upcoming weeks or months to give the 2-year leeway that is needed for re-promotion. So yeah, it's still going to be complicated for Xi to allocate much resource to foreign policy, although he's been known to favor foreign policy to domestic issues, but he will really need to take a step back and focus on what's happening inside because other people are rising, networks are pressuring him into compromise, and if he doesn't pay enough attention to that, it's going to be problematic for 2022.
And just to be clear, there has still not been an unofficial or / official announcement of a transition team this late into the tenure. So
no, so we expect it to be next October at the very latest, and if nothing happens, then I mean, again, we're way too far. But like, if it doesn't happen, then uh, we can expect a very difficult transition without transition to from the 20th Party Congress opening onto 2023, 2024. It's going to become the tension will rise inside the party, that's for sure. Although they're already very, very high right now, but it's going to be even more afterwards.
What do you think the chances are he just takes a third term?
I mean, like I said, right now he doesn't need to because ally wise, he's pretty good. He's got a good base, but he could. Technically, he can. He changed the rules. He can.
But the institutional damage that would do.
Should he? No. Can he? Yes. And does he need to? No, because he has sufficient amount of allies to ensure his survival in the game up until 2027. No problem. He can do that. That's fine. He doesn't need to stay. So, yeah. I mean, what are the chances? I mean, looking at the way he behaves, they're still high. But will the party swallow that? They swallowed the rules. Like, when he changed the rule, they didn't. I mean, we didn't see, like, anything erupt, so it's got to be complicated for them.
Again, but it's also, I mean, the party is also kind of testing him too, right? In a sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But now that he vanquished poverty, I mean, he can take a step back. Like, so, yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, this year is going to be interesting because not only on the political front, which is going to, like you said, a lot of movement throughout the fucking entire party state apparatus, but also economically. I mean, we saw China basically closing in the positive for 2020. I can't remember what the exact percent of GDP growth is. I mean, it was modest, but it was still positive growth.
Yeah, around 3.5 or 4, something like that.
Yeah, high threes. And the PBOC has already signaled that it's gonna keep monetary policy very accommodative, which means it knows its companies can't handle a sharp turn in monetary policy. Is a long-running problem, and the problem, and the bigger problem is that the longer they keep it accommodative, the weaker these companies become because they're just functioning off of cheap credit, and this cheap access to credit is ultimately going to do more damage the longer they keep it on. But at the same time, like, they need economic growth. That without it, this regime is going to stagnate. So, I mean, the PBOC is in a really tough position. So we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a chance to come back on a lot of these issues as time goes by. So
yeah,
I mean, we dived in what was most important, I think, for the year, and we'll cover other issues later on.
Yeah, we'll do some like separate episodes on explaining, I guess, rules within the party state, like stuff like the Yushangbasha, sprinting with small steps.
Oh yeah.
Terms and stuff like that. I feel like those are be important to explain.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Well, I think we should close out this episode. Next episode is going to be, I don't think we've yet decided if this is going to be bi-monthly or monthly. So I guess we'll figure it out along the way.
We can always go rogue. We'll see how it goes.
I guess it really depends on how eventful January turns out to be, I guess. So
yeah. Well, yeah, sure, but we'll see. We can always, it depends on the spur of the moment.
All right, that's it. That's it for the first episode.
Yep, it's in the books. So,
cool.
Talk to you next time.
Ciao.